people won't always remember what you say, but they'll always remember how you make them
feel.
I want to make sure when I speak to someone that I make them feel something by how I communicate. The amount of calls that I've reviewed, and it's like everything you're saying is great, but the prospect hates you because it looks like you've never smiled a day in your life. I remember he used to say a long time ago, he would say, Payton, being able to smile when you talk sometimes is more valuable than a college degree.
What if you could build a business in the modern world as big or as small as you want without having to compromise the things that were the most important to you in the very beginning? This is the Wealthy Consultant Talks podcast with Taylor Welch and Mike Walker, as they share with you today their learning lessons from stories in their experiences over the past 10 to 15 years and share with you right here, right now. Let's get into it.
What is going on, my friends? Mike Walker here. Excited to have you with us on another episode of the Wealthy Consultant Podcast. I've got a good friend, a buddy, an alliance, a powerhouse in the world of sales, Mr. Payton Welch. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm amazing. What an intro.
Well, I've got to do something, man. You're probably, I know you're worthy of more than that, but for brevity here, I'll keep it at that as sales pro. But dude, you and I have had the opportunity to jam quite a bit in terms of all things sales, performance, and whatnot. And obviously you are highly sought after. In fact, one of the cool features, if you listeners don't know, we actually pull Payton into Launch Kit and Chamber once a week. We have a call dedicated just for him called the Sales Clinics, where our clients are able to tap this guy's brain. So if you like anything about what we talk about today, then you definitely need to learn more about what we do over at the Wealthy Consultant, because if you are a subject matter expert or somebody that needs to move more units, more revenue in a business, then this is the guy that you definitely want to talk to. And that's exactly what we're being jamming on today is sales performance, tactics, strategies, all things good, all things about money. Payton, on that topic, bro, like I just said, you are in with our clients every single Tuesday. What, in your opinion, is kind of the dominant interest as you see clients come through and asking questions? What do you get tapped for the most?
So I get tapped for a lot of different things, but what they all a lot of times come down to is like, well, how do I just know the right thing to say? I remember being on back-to-back sales calls and one person wouldn't close and I thought they could have. And I was just like, man, if I just knew the perfect thing to say to this person, I would have definitely moved them over the line. Like anyone that's ever taken a sales call has felt that before. Like, man, I just wish I had this.
The line, you're like, oh, if only I'd said this, right?
Yeah, it's like the hindsight's always 20/20, but I'm like, man, if I had a superpower where it's like, I'm talking to Mike, I know exactly what to say to Mike to get him across the line or whatever. Like, how do you know the right things to say? That's what a lot of the questions that I get asked the trail ends up boiling down to basically that topic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And so I think one of the things that I've been sharing with a lot of people in terms of like, well, how do you know the right thing to say? You have to understand intent. You have to know you have to know the intent first. So it's like the right thing to say to person A might be completely different to say to person B. Well, how do I tell the difference? We do this a lot through something called temp checks, right? We all know what temp checks are, and especially in our space, temp checks have turned a little bit more into like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about X?
Oh yeah, right. Like where are you at, right?
But that's like one tiny slice of the pie. I'm getting temp checks from you right now because I'm based on your tonality, based on your body language, and when you smile, or if you've ever made a joke and no one laughs in your humility, like bad temp check.
That happens a lot, dude. What are you saying?
Yeah, tells me this joke didn't work with this crowd, like what, all of that stuff. So it's like the temp checks that you can get, if you understand how temp checks truly work, a temp check, the whole basis of a temp check is basically to be able to read someone's intent, right? And so if you are skilled at reading temp checks, again, this is more than just scale of 1 to 10 for you. That will lead you to, okay, what is their intent, which can give me more of a scale, an appropriate guideline for like, okay, what can I say to get them to a better temp? And then the next one and the next one. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah.
It's
so
very
they don't
nuanced.
have to be like, I'm flying 10 right now. It's like, okay, if you get a 3 or 4, you're like, all right, but you just use that as a metric to know what direction you got to take the conversation.
Yeah. And that's an example of, again, for like the most classic scale of 1 to 10, or whatever. But I mean, even I was reviewing a call earlier today, and this salesperson was asking, like, do you see how this solves X, Y, and Z that you told me about earlier? And they were like, I think so. And then they just moved on. And I was like, man, read the room. This isn't that question wasn't necessarily just to get a temp check, but it gives you a temp check. When I asked my wife to marry me, she didn't say, I think so.
Right.
That would be crazy. No, she was like, hallelujah. No, that's not really what she did, but she,
in your mind, that's what happened.
Exactly. And so it's what someone says, but not just that alone. Because again, when you asked your wife to marry you, she probably wasn't like, yes, right word, wrong way to say it. Something's a little whatever. So being able to read the different levels of communication, not just what they say, but also their tonality, the body language, right? How much someone doesn't say something, how someone's silent about a certain topic or whatever. And when you get really good at this, you can adopt almost this intent-based sales process where you can continually nudge someone in the direction that they need to go based on the deficits that you're seeing or whatever. And this can get a little confusing because then it creates almost like this giant decision tree where it's like, well, if I don't get this temp here, that, and you don't need to confuse it to that level. But one big thing that I've been seeing a lot is like, okay, let's review the game tape for this question you have of like, well, what should I say if someone says this? And then when we review the game tape, it's like, oh, it's obvious. Like, are you watching the same thing I'm watching? Like, you got an answer, you didn't get a response, or they said the right thing, they said it the right way or the wrong way. Or maybe their body language is saying one thing, but their words are saying another. And if you can read the intent, if you can read the temp checks, well, then you have a way better chance of knowing, like, we can just isolate, like, this is something that's going to move the deal further. This is something that's going to move this person a step further. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I want to kind of highlight a word that you use that I think people miss. They don't miss it subconsciously, but they do miss it consciously, which is body language. Now all our calls, I mean, for most people, a lot of people say, is these calls are being held on Zoom or some kind of video format, right? And so we have a whole nother spectrum of, body information, data, you'll say visual data coming at us that we can use to decipher and read between the lines that you wouldn't normally get just, literally over the phone. How have you seen that impact? You obviously train a lot of salespeople. So are there still a bunch of people just hammering the phones? I've got to believe there are. And then how does your training insights handle for that dynamic where they can't see the person and those that can when they're, video calling? I'd be interested to know the dichotomy between those two mediums.
Yeah. I mean, being able to see someone like what we're doing right now is a game changer. And it just like, sales has just gotten so much better with technology. I mean, you remember too, like back in the day with sales, like we didn't have auto dialer. Right. You had to hold the phone up and dial everything by hand and go crunch through. And now you could just basically import a list and it's amazing. But being able to do things over Zoom or Google Meet or what we're doing right now, it allows you to play 3D chess. So it's an extra tool at your disposal. Right. And there are still a lot of people that are just doing things over the phone, or maybe the BDRs, SDRs are doing phone calls, and then an actual full sales call consult, whatever would be over Zoom. I always at first I didn't like doing Zoom calls because it's more effort. Like what I'm doing right now. Yeah. If we weren't doing video, I would probably just be like, playing putt-putt over in the side room of my office because I can relax and do whatever. But in the end, it's like if the goal is to be able to help someone make the best decision for them, which typically means converting into a paying client, well, then I want to be able to use all the tools at my disposal and being able to have video on where I can read the body language. If someone starts out the call with great body language, like I'm doing right now, I'm moving my hands around and I talk with my eyebrows a lot, which my wife makes fun of me because it's giving me these wrinkles because my eyebrows are always up.
I hear it all the time too. But
yeah.
That's why I just don't smile anymore. It's supposed to be good for
I just keep my eyebrows down. Yeah. if someone at the beginning of the call is very like animated with their hands, and then at some point or whatever, they're just very rigid, like a stone statue or whatever, you should check on some, like there's a potential that we've lost them a little bit. Yeah, exactly. And so being able to spot those signs, right? And then being able to confirm with the temp check questions or whatever, read again the tonality, the answer or whatever, will let you know, because sometimes we assume things. Sometimes I assume like, oh, I've lost this person. And I get a temp check and it's like, oh no, they're fine. They just need caffeine, or this is their 7th meeting and they're just getting a little tired. It's like, we're still good, right. But sometimes if there is a problem, you need to know about it, and being able to pay attention to, like you said, with the camera and the video and being able to read the body language, it does make a big difference. It's a great tool to use.
No doubt. No doubt. One thing too, kind of another layer of that, another dimension of the visual cues is like their background and what's going on in their world that, you can see. Like if I see open closet and clothes all over the place and stuff, I'm instantly thinking like, this person's not very aware of the fact I'm literally looking at their room that looks like just total shit, or if someone's just very positioned, you can tell, oh, wow, they've got their lighting set up right. They understand the dynamics of what's going on. They're trying to show up in the best way. They're not just like a silhouette because they're standing in front of the sun, whatever. Like to me, I'm pulling off all these different things that kind of allows me to rate where does this person at in terms of their sophistication and these types of communications. What insights do you have on that as it pertains specifically to sales? Like, do you see correlation between those that are presenting better on camera and those that are not, or is that a dynamic that doesn't necessarily directly translate to better or more sales?
Yeah, good question. So this is actually, I don't know if you've actually seen this. One of the trainings for the TWC sales team is one I recorded called Zoom Etiquette, and it's all about what you just mentioned. And so that's not something that I would necessarily say is like a mountain or a major in terms of like the prospect I'm seeing, but for me, it as the sales rep, it definitely is. So decent lighting. You don't have to wear a suit and tie or anything crazy like that, but like don't wear a flat bill hat. Like fix your hair, trim your beard. Don't look like you're a Civil War vet or whatever. Like clean up a little bit, Camera at like eye level or a little bit higher. No one wants to see the triple chin because you're like looking down at like, you know what I mean? So it's like those things do really matter, because here's the thing. It's like, it's not necessarily the end all be all. Like I can have great Zoom etiquette, but I have no idea what I'm doing in sales. You're not going to close anything. But at the same time, especially if I happen to get on the phone on a call with a prospect that maybe has a little bit more of a corporate background, a little bit more of like that executive style background. The last reason to lose a sale in my mind is like just because I didn't look presentable and professional at the bare minimum, right? Because that would be a silly reason to lose trust. If this is something where I could actually solve someone's problem, I don't want my lack of Zoom etiquette to cost me a deal. That's crazy. And I see that a lot actually nowadays, especially with the whole, when COVID happened, everyone's working from home. A lot of sales reps, even in this industry, 1099s, they're taking calls from home or whatnot. It's like, man, fix if you have to take a call from your bedroom and your bed is in the background, fix the fucking bed. Exactly. Pardon my French. Fix it. Like bare minimum.
I was literally on a call with a software company that I was doing some research on as a potential vendor for us. And the discovery call, the 15-minute call prior in advance of anything deeper, this guy picks up, the line and we're on, and I'm looking at his house, his hair's kind of disheveled at the background. Like I'm looking at, he's obviously somewhere in his like living room, it looks like, and it just looks all kind of disheveled. And same thing, like, sure, I'm interested in the software, so it didn't kill the deal, but damn, dude, like I'm thinking, bro, if you are my first impression, you've just come off real bad right now, and
which is a crazy reason to lose any kind of like relational equity, leadership, authority on a call. Like,
right,
man, it's so simple, but it can make a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. So the video component is obviously big, body language, all those things. What other kind of dynamics, what would you say is the biggest thing holding people back? The clients that are coming to you on these sales clinic calls, do you see something that is typically a huge unlock for people beyond just knowing what to say? But is there any other element that they come back the next week, for example, be like, oh my God, like that was the game changer? Or are we talking, it's tons of different things for tons of different people?
Well, I mean, There's if we're talking about, yes, there is. Here's the most common thing I think that is just like such an easy change to make, and it unlock little keys open big doors sometimes. And this is one of those little keys that continuously, that was Pastor Payton coming out from back in the day right there. Little keys open up big doors. Pastor Brian Larson, shout out. I remember you saying that a long time ago. The people won't always remember what you say, but they'll always remember how you make them feel. Exactly. And so even the things that we just talked about right here around like the things that I will read in someone else to get a temp check, those are things that are interpersonal skills that we use as well to make someone feel something. And yeah, in the end, like, can I solve this person's problem? Do they have certainty that the solution? Very important. But at the same time, just like you even mentioned, just seeing someone's disheveled background in their call, it does reduce a little bit of the, ooh, like, is this person really professional or whatever? That's they're feeling a certain way based on what they're seeing. I want to make sure when I speak to someone that I make them feel something by how I communicate, right? And so a lot of the big ahas, like, oh, this was so simple to implement, but it made such a big difference, would be exactly actually what we're talking about, but in reverse. So instead of reading it on the prospect, are you using efficient tonality? Is your cadence appropriate? Are you using body language, or does it look like your hands are tied to your side? And it's like, whatever. Can you smile when you talk? The amount of calls that I've reviewed, and it's like everything you're saying is great, but the prospect hates you because it looks like you've never smiled a day in your life. Like, how do people not know this? And again, when I was growing up, it was so funny. My father, and, being in the corporate world and in sales and, Allstate and all this stuff. I remember at a very young age, he was even taking us through these exercises, like at home workshops, where he would teach us how to shake someone's hand.
Yeah, man.
He would teach us,
learn how to shake a hand.
He would teach us. I remember he used to say a long time ago, he would say, Payton, being able to smile when you talk sometimes is more valuable than a college degree. And that stuck with me forever. And it's like, man, yeah, if you can just like these little basic interpersonal skills. And nowadays you have a generation that's been growing up on Zoom, and they, especially with COVID, and it's like you were locked in for 3 years, and you don't get as many of these times to exercise interpersonal skills with other people, but that comes through on Zoom too. And so being able to, have the influx of your voice, bring up the temperature, so to speak, of a conversation with my tone, or when I'm talking about something serious and my cadence slows down and my tone also comes down with it. Like, those little things can make a big difference in terms of the power punch that what you say. If I say something and it's important, I want it to land. I want it to have sticking power. The way that we have that sticking power is by making them feel something along with what you're actually saying. Right. Yeah. I don't remember anything from college. I don't remember any of my classes. I don't remember any of the lectures that we got, but I remember when I had to speak in front of the class. I remember when I had to share with the group, and even with the speaker training, Keith Yackey was talking about this too. It's like that creates the feeling of it creates a little bit of that retention, that sticking power. I want to do the same thing on sales calls. The last thing that I want to do is say something that's going to like really change something for this person. It's very useful, but then it becomes useless because I didn't communicate it in a way where they would retain what I actually said. You know what I mean?
Yeah, where it really stuck and landed. Yeah, no, I totally get that, man. Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. The concepts that you teach and the ability for people to connect, right? I mean, the business of business is relationships. So developing that know, like, trust factor that we always talk about in the marketing side of things, and then bringing it onto a phone or video call. I feel like the ability to convert, is it just a numbers game? Do you just see that, hey, you just got to keep doing the reps, or are there tactical things that people can do to speed up the process of getting better? Like when you work with a client, I don't want you to, unpack all your bag of tricks, but what would be one or two actionable things that someone could do today, right now, today, after this, watching this video or listening to us, that they could go and implement that will, measurably make them better or more efficient when it comes to the sales side of things?
Well, I think to answer that question with like something that is curated and specific, you first, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh yeah, I want a takeaway that's going to make you first need to know what your deficit is, right? to get to any destination, if I pull up my Maps app right now, I just open up the app. What's the first thing that pops up? My location. Mm-hmm. You have to know where you're starting from right now. It's great. Everyone likes talking about vision and goals, and that's the most fun part of the sales call for anyone because it's easy to talk about. Like, that's great to have the destination. You got to know where your starting point is right now. So if your deficit is maybe on those interpersonal side, it's like, well, my voice is just typically monotone, or well, I typically talk this way or whatever. Then yeah, some actionable things that you can do both maybe on sales calls, off sales calls would be to practice your tonality, practice smiling when you talk, practice your cadence and whatnot. And you can do that outside of sales calls too. And I tell a lot of sales reps this as well. Like if that's your deficit, yeah, let's try to be more intentional on calls to do that. But when you're off calls too, next time you go on date night, you have a secret mission. I'm gonna try to bring some energy with my voice. Mm-hmm. Or when you're at getting a beer with the boys, or you're at a lunch meeting, or you go to church, you can practice these interpersonal things as well. And what that does is that condenses your training time to be able to get what you want from here to here because you get more reps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right? Bring it into real life, right?
Exactly. Now, if someone's listening to this and they're like, no, I'm the life of a party when I'm communicating with people. One, hats off to you. That's great. Yeah. If it's more of the tactical side of things, right? Maybe it's like being able to ask questions that will take someone a little bit deeper, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to just settle for the symptom that a prospect tells me, well, I need more leads. Well, we got the problem. Let's move on. Well, no. Like if you want to be able to go deeper into that topic, right? Well, what's causing you to not have the leads that you need right now? Where's that? What have you tried to do to fix it? If you want to get better at that, again, let's be intentional about asking those why questions, right? It's not if I go to the doctor's office and I've got a cough and then he just writes me a prescription or gives me a cough drop, but he doesn't check anything else. What if I've got pneumonia? What if I've got something worse? That's malpractice just to prescribe something without going deeper. Salespeople need to do the same thing. You can also practice that outside of your calls. I remember one time I was on date night with my wife and I was like, I'm just going to practice brevity. And I want my wife to be talking the entire time. I'm just going to practice handing over the microphone. And the entire date night, she's telling me about something. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. Like, why did that happen? Or that's crazy. Why do you think she did that? Or whatever. And I probably said 3 sentences the entire dinner. Wow, but afterwards, she was like, that was like one of the best date nights we've ever had. It's like, I said maybe 30 words.
Often. You're thinking, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's like, I barely said anything, but to her,
irony. Yeah.
And the same thing happens there's some of the best calls I've ever had. If you look at the percentage of talking points or whatever, it's like mine was like 20%, theirs was 80%, but they feel like they felt like I put out. Ooh. They felt like I delivered. Those are the things, again, you can practice. That's why I love sales and sales training, is because you can get the reps to be able to get better, increase your skill set, make more money in sales, even by the things you practice outside of calls. So regardless of what that you need to know what your deficit is so you know what to work on. Otherwise, we just work on things randomly and then you still don't have the results you want. But these are things that you can practice outside of sales calls as well. And it just condenses the timeline for you getting what you want.
Damn, dude. That's the one to take home, guys.
And it's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah. But you can't confuse sophistication with simplicity. They often are the same. So let's land on that one. That was a good one. So guys, like as a recap here, put this in your pocket, apply it today. Start embracing the sales conversation techniques, the tonalities into your everyday conversations. And that's going to give you more reps. That's a writer downer, take home, whatever you want to call it. Love that, bro. Love that. Look,
the last thing, if you're okay, if I add one last thing to it,
do it, man.
When you find your deficit and you start practicing on it and you're practicing outside of calls or whatever, you got to remember this isn't a microwave process. It's not like I just need to use more tonality. And even though I historically haven't had any, and it's like, oh, it's perfect. Like you have to be okay with crashing the bike when you're getting on it for the first time. When I was learning to ride a bike, I wrecked that thing why don't we see the same process when we're learning to develop a skill set? So when you're practicing these things, like be okay with you fumbling the bag a little bit, be okay with it being sloppy. Be okay with you trying this out on date night and it's like, oh, that didn't work. Well, that doesn't mean you should just give up. It just means you crashed the bike once. You got to get back on it. That's what will actually develop and create the lift that you're looking for. You can't just give up after you just crash the bike once. Does that make sense?
Ooh. Love that analogy. And I think a lot of people relate, right? Because like you said, it's, you look back and go, well, that'd be dumb if I crash the bike once and go, oh, yeah, that doesn't work. Can't ride the bike now for the rest of my life. Like, dude, come on, don't be dumb, right? And yet we bring that type of stupidity into our adult business life. We're like, well, that sucked. That was really uncomfortable. She hated that, and definitely not talking to her about that anymore. It's like, come on, dude, like you did that one time, right? So
that's what I tell all of the clients too on the sales clinics whenever we're working on something is like, hey, by the way, I want to review the call next week so we can see the progress. But just so you know, like, I'm not looking for perfection. I just want to see the effort. If I can see the effort on the call, then I know what else we need to chip away at. And then it'll be better on the next one. And then it'll be better on the next one. And then soon you don't even need me anymore. All you have to do is just put forth the concerted effort. That's 50% of the job right there.
Love that. Awesome, man. Well, as always, you bring the heat, dude. I appreciate your insights. I know everybody here does as well. Guys, we'll be bringing Payton on again. Don't worry. But I would go back, kind of save this one, probably even pass this along to any of your team members, have them give it a listen, and most importantly, apply, right? Because knowledge isn't power. It's only potential power. It becomes powerful when you actually damn use it. And like Payton just said, small keys open big doors. And so you might want to apply these small keys and they'll transform your sales performance. Payton, thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for everything that you invest into our clients every single week. I know it is by far one of the most attended, popular, and most importantly, transformative calls that we do all week. I get comments all the time, man. So I don't know if you do, but just know that you have a whole bunch of fans over here in Chamber and Launch Kit, and they all appreciate what it is that you do every single week for us.
I appreciate it, man. I love hearing that.
Cool. Rock and roll, guys. Join us on another episode of The Wealthy Consultant. Pass this episode along to somebody that needs it. There's somebody in your world, in your network, in your organization that needs to know how to sell better. This is a good one. Put this in their pocket, make them listen to it, and let's get better together. Take care, guys. See you on another episode.
Cheers.